2 weeks to go off back to the States, or we went to Hawaii, met in Hawaii.
Great.
And then we also had about a week's leave while I went to Thailand on my leave.
I see, yeah. Joe, you were stationed in several countries in Southeast Asia, as you've mentioned. You're a pilot. Describe the areas you were in, how it was. What did the country look like?
Well, Vietnam has everything from open plains and lots of water and rivers and everything in the south to mountainous country in the Central Highlands, and we performed just north of the Central Highlands. So it was mountainous. And then further up north, it would be fairly heavy jungle. But a lot of the land looked not a lot different than North Alabama looks.
Yeah. Especially up north, it was more a mountain.
Or in the central part.
In the central, yeah, right.
Heavy forest a lot, where there would be openings. And of course, the people there did what they call slash and burn. They would cut down the forest and turn it into farmlands and everything. So you would have forest and open land.
Right.
Lots of rice paddies.
Right. Joe, as we mentioned earlier, you were twice awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for your heroic actions in Vietnam. Tell us about the battles or combat action that led to you receiving these Valor Awards. Just take us through that.
Okay, I got two what's called the DFC.
Right.
We call it the DFC,
Right.
Distinguished Flying Cross. And the first one was, I had served a tour in slicks. I chose to become a gunship pilot, and so they say, okay, you're going to serve a tour in a slick first.
Which is more to carry
1 or 2
troops.
weeks. Yeah, right, carrying the troops around. And I had one tour as a gunship co-pilot, and then on my second tour, which was in August of '68, we were sent up north of the Bamituid base on a different mission, and we were there for 2 days, and the weather was so bad we had to cut that short and come back. Well, we got back to the compound, and that night, 2 regiments of North Vietnamese Army attacked the camp that was just to the west of us that we normally sat in the gunships. We would sit strip alert waiting for our team so we could be close to them.
Right.
And they overran. It was on 2 hills, a large hill and a small hill with a little road running down to a rubberized runway about 2,500 feet long with a little Montagnard village next to it. And we had been sitting strip alert there for weeks, and they had been infiltrating through it this whole time. So in the plantations next to us and everything, while we were sitting out there in the open on that ramp, the NVA Army was
You were being attacked.
was infiltrating in.
Yeah.
So anyway, they attacked and they took the little hill the first night. There were a couple of thousand of them. And fierce battle. A couple of the Special Forces troops there got killed. Intense battle, mortars going off and everything. And the next morning what they did was they asked for gunships to come in between the fighters that were supporting the camp.
Right.
So I was in the second group that went that morning, and we went there and we flew around waiting until the FAC called us in between the fighter sticks that would come in. And we went and played like what we call the spooky, the fixed-wing gunship, because we had miniguns and rockets. We couldn't get down close because the ground fire was just so intense. So we had to stay up about 2,000 feet and just fire our miniguns down wherever the FAC wanted us to, and fire the rockets. Well, we did that for a while. Of course, it's a 2-ship element is what it is, and I was the co-pilot and the lead bird, and we expended our ammunition in our bird, and the second bird had about 500 rounds left, so we started home. As we were about a minute out, the FAC comes on the air and said an F-100 fighter pilot had just ejected over the camp, and he was parachuting into the camp. So I looked over at my pilot, and Bill says, "What are we supposed to do?" And I said, "I think we're supposed to go back."
Right.
So there we were now, basically a slick thing, only our personal weapons. We had nothing else to support us. So we flew back west, passed over the camp and the village, and we could see the chute on top of draped over one of the hooches down there. Turned around and made a landing and came to a hover. And on the way down, Bill Davis, the pilot, told that Chuck Crabb, the #2 guy, he had about 500 rounds left in his minigun, one of his miniguns,
Right.
and he said, do whatever you can for us.
Right.
So we came to a hover over the chute, and everything broke loose at that point. People running everywhere, gunfire going off. And by the way, you could hear the gunfire, the small arms fire,
Right.
even from 2,000 feet. It sounded
Wow.
like a popcorn machine the whole time we were there.
Pop it, yeah.
And looked around, tried to find the pilot and everything, and I looked down and I saw he was in a group of green-colored fatigued people, his head down, running like mad toward the road next to the village. And there, I looked over and there was an ambulance and a Jeep there. And evidently the Special Forces people from the camp had come down between those two hills and had met up with him and the bad guys, and they were running. They didn't even see us up there.
Right.
So about that time, Chuck Crabb came flying over the top of us, screaming he'd been hit. He had wounded on board and everything. So we couldn't do anything from that point. So we followed him out and left. But you know, we were actually instrumental in drawing attention away from them so they could get to the vehicles and back in again. Bill was awarded and Chuck were awarded Silver Stars, and the two by the way, the co-pilot, his bird, on his first tour on the mission, the bullet came up and split his arm. And that was the wounded.
I see.
And we both got DFCs on that one.
I see. And the other award, the next DFC
The next one,
was...
I don't remember the circumstances on that. We had so many of those little... Whenever the teams would get in trouble, we would have, you know,
You had to
it'd be
go
a
out in the system,
hot
huh?
time getting
Yeah.
them out,
Yeah.
getting them out again, yes. But it occurred about a month later.
I see. I see.
It actually over in Cambodia that time.
I see. And you had mentioned the fact, and you were talking about forward air control. Some of the kids that may not know exactly what that was. Joe, how would you describe to young people what it's like to serve in a war zone? The thoughts you have of possibly being killed or wounded during battle.
Well, of course, that's always with you. I mean, everybody's scared over there. But you know, that's what you were there to do. You had to do it.
You have a mission and you have to carry it out.
Yeah.
I know people often wonder, is it okay to be afraid or scared during combat? How would you answer that?
Sure, and I've got a story about it.
Okay.
On my very last tour, we were up north again, flying out of a base called Pleiku, and flying missions over just south of the Laotian border in Cambodia. And I was in the second, and we had all the gunships and slicks there because we were away from the combat, you know, our main base. And I was in the #2 set of gunships. And the first set of gunships were sitting strip alert for a team that was in Cambodia. And the team got compromised, and so they took off and went to support them. Well, our element was then called up to go replace them at the strip alert location in case we were needed. Well, I remember we jumped in the helicopters and started. I looked over at the runway, and the transport airplane that was there to change the crews with the replacement crews and everything was just landing. And then my #2 guy said he couldn't get his helicopter started. So I had to go off by myself, went to the strip alert site. As soon as I got there, they called and said one of our other gunships had been shot down, and they needed me. So I took off, got up to about 2,000 feet, flew until we found them, and I was up there, and I could see the other gunship still flying around the location where the team was, and I couldn't go down. I couldn't make myself descend down and do it. So finally he came on the air and said, get your you-know-what down here. And that did it. I went down.
That prompted you.
Yeah, I went down, almost crashed during that thing. Came back and had a bullet hole in the rotor blade. But I was scared. I just couldn't make myself go down until he came on and said, get down here.
And that gave you the ultimate kick in the you-know-what, right? Joe, when people mention your Valor Awards and call you a hero, how does that make you feel?
Well, it makes you feel humble, of course.
And you've talked to a lot of people about this. I mean, other veterans, I guess, and all of them basically feel the same way, don't they?
Right.
Yeah. Was this period your most fearful time? I think you just explained that, but it was probably your most fearful time in Vietnam. Was that? Would you say that? Characterize that as?
Well, during the temporary duty, 3 months I was over there, I was just flying missions, so flew all over South Vietnam and just doing odd jobs and stuff. But on the actual combat mission, I mean, it was fearful. And of course, we were susceptible to being mortar attacked in the compound over there, even at the main base back at Nha Trang. And they did that all the time.
You're always in harm's way.
Rockets coming in, or mortars coming in, that kind of thing.
Now, your unit, the 20th, I believe you mentioned, aviation unit, correct, you can correct me on that, but that was the only Air Force helicopter unit in Vietnam, is that right?
Well, actually not. I said we joined that transport unit, but then they were moved to Thailand to do missions in Thailand. And when I came back for permanent station, and we had an agreement with the Army that the Army was going to do the helicopters and the Air Force was going to do the fixed wing work.
Right.
So, but they left our unit there, and we were the only non-rescue helicopter unit during my tour there.
And you've talked, we've talked about this a little bit before. I mean, this was an honor for you to serve with this unit. You've talked about that.
It was a tremendous unit. I mean, we were going over there in unmarked helicopters, where anytime we would be shot down and captured, I mean, we could be even treated as spies, maybe.
Right.
And the unit was something. Because of the fact that everything was so classified, we couldn't put in for the medals. We just didn't have the resources to describe what we were doing because it had to be classified. And we didn't have the resources to write all that up. So most of the time we were saying that the stuff happened somewhere in Vietnam and not in Cambodia. And so the medals that were awarded were, you know, not real medals.